It's the night of April 15th, 2003, Boogley Creek, Australia. A storm is raging. Hidden in the shadows, the Australian Federal Police are surveilling two men on a desolate beach. Months earlier, an anonymous tip from Thailand warned them. These men were part of an international crime ring, soon to be involved in a major drug deal. Tonight, that multiple-month-long investigation seemed to be coming together. The two suspects were waiting on the shore, cloaked by wind, rain, and darkness of the night. The perfect cover. But what the agents still didn't know was how the deal would go down or who would show up. Then, through the crashing dark waves, a massive ocean freighter suddenly emerged from the blackness, dangerously close to the rocky shore. It looked like a scene from a horror film, but this was real. What was about to unfold wouldn't just expose some ordinary drug deal. It would blow open a Pandora's box, unveiling one of the most intricate drug trafficking empires the world has ever seen. The investigators were stunned by what they were seeing. In the worst weather imaginable, a massive freighter ship lowered the Dinghy into the crashing waters. It started making its way towards the beach, but the weather that night was unsustainable for the small boat. On the way in, the Dinghy capsized in the waves. Still, the shipment somehow made it to the shore. The two men that were waiting on the beach picked it up and drove it back to their hotel, not knowing they were being watched the entire time. Confident they hadn't been spotted, the two men went to sleep without care. They were so sure of themselves they left the drugs in the car in the hotel garage. That night, the agents checked the vehicle and confirmed what they were looking for: 50 kilograms of pure heroin. The next morning, as the two men were leaving the hotel, investigators intercepted and arrested them. Later that day, a third accomplice was also apprehended. At the same time, police made their way to Boogley Creek to find the Dinghy crew. One passenger was found dead, tangled in seaweed. The other had washed ashore, still alive, but stranded. With the buyers now in custody, the Australian authorities had a new problem: the mysterious drug ship. It was called the Pong Su, a 349-foot cargo freighter registered under the flag of Tuvalu, a tiny island nation. But the ship itself was owned by a company based in North Korea. After the bust, authorities ordered the Pong Su to stop and surrender, but the crew refused and made a run towards international waters.
Pong Su, if you do not stop your vessel or alter course, we will stop your vessel, or the Australian government will stop your vessel using any method available.
Police vessels tried everything to follow it, but the weather was still incredibly rough. After 4 days of chasing the freighter through violent seas, Australian police called for help. The Prime Minister authorized military action. In wild, stormy conditions, a special forces team from the HMAS Stuart boarded the Pong Su. The chase was finally over.
The North Korean freighter was captured in a joint military and police operation that ended with a daring raid in heavy seas off Newcastle.
The ship was towed to Sydney and the crew arrested. But what investigators found on board shocked them even more. There was no cargo, just drugs. The ship had been stripped down and modified for long-distance travel, so it could avoid stopping at ports and attracting attention. Even more shocking, among the crew was an official member from North Korea's ruling party, probably there to oversee the operation. During questioning, the crew insisted that the ship was privately owned by the Pong Su Shipping Company and had no ties to the North Korean government. But let's be honest, North Korea isn't exactly known for its free enterprise. It's a totalitarian state where nothing happens without the regime's say-so. The presence of a high-ranking North Korean official on board made it pretty clear to Australian authorities this wasn't just some rogue operation. It was state-sponsored drug trafficking. Of the 34 people arrested, including the 3 men on shore and 1 survivor from the Dinghy, only 7 were ultimately charged with drug offenses. Most of the crew were released due to a lack of evidence and extradited back to North Korea. What happened to them after that, no one knows for sure. But many suspect they were faced with harsh and possibly irreversible punishment once they got home. Western governments have suspected for decades that the North Korean regime had been involved in drug trafficking. Bong-soo was just the biggest proof that these fears were in fact true. Investigating anything inside North Korea is of course incredibly difficult. It's the most secretive country in the world. But over the years, many documents have surfaced that strongly suggest that the North Korean government was heavily involved in drug production for decades. The story goes all the way back to 1970s. That's when North Korea allegedly began producing drugs in the deep mountainous regions of Hamgyong and Yangyang provinces. The country was struggling economically, and according to several reports, it was Kim Il-sung himself, the first supreme leader, who came to the region and ordered the development of opium farms. It wasn't a random decision. The Japanese colonial government, which controlled the Korean peninsula before World War II, had previously used those same areas to grow opium. And so after Kim Il-sung ordered the operation, the local provincial party committee got to work, setting up hidden opium farms tightly guarded by state security agents. Opium itself is a substance extracted from the poppy plant. It's full of alkaloids, chemicals like morphine, which is the base ingredient used to create heroin. To hide what they were doing, North Korean officials started calling the poppies white bellflowers. But in reality, it was an open secret. Everyone knew what was going on. As the years passed, the secret operation grew. By the late 1990s, the central government gave direct orders that all local collective farms had to start growing poppies. The setup was simple. The poor farmers in remote mountains grew the poppies under strict supervision. The harvest was then shipped to government-run pharmaceutical plants. That's where it was refined into heroin under the watch of 7 or 8 drug experts from Thailand, according to reports. All of it done under the direct control of the North Korean government. And this wasn't just some small rogue operation hidden from the North Korean public. According to high-ranking North Korean defectors, even high school students were forced to help with the drug trade. Both boys and girls were sent out to poppy fields after school. Every day, they worked 4 to 5 hours harvesting opium. A lot of them developed serious addictions. In the 1990s, the country was hit by a massive famine known as the Arduous March. Roughly 5% of the entire population died from starvation. That's over 1 million people. But instead of prioritizing food production, the regime ordered farmers to grow opium, telling them that heroin could be sold internationally for 10 times the price of grain. At its peak during that time, North Korea was reportedly producing 40 metric tons of heroin per year. In the late 1990s, floods hit and damaged many of the country's poppy fields. That's when the North Korean government shifted focus from heroin to crystal meth. Meth was easier to make, no need for massive farms, just chemicals, some base equipment, and the right scientists. The key ingredient was ephedrine. North Korea reportedly imported it from all over the world: China, India, Germany, Belgium, Australia, Hong Kong, even France. Once they had the materials, meth was produced in both large, state-owned pharmaceutical factories and in smaller, secret labs scattered across the country. According to multiple sources, the methamphetamine produced by North Korean scientists was some of the purest on the market. And as meth started gaining popularity in the United States during the mid-1990s, North Korea ramped up its production to meet the growing demand. Now that we know how the production worked inside North Korea, how were they selling the drugs? How did the criminal pyramid itself look like? During the 1980s and 90s, as North Korea's economy crumbled, the regime had to shut down several of its embassies abroad, and the ones that stayed open, they were told to finance themselves. I mean, it's absurd. Can you imagine working for the state and instead of them giving you the job and the money, you have to think of the job to self-sustain yourself, and part of the money you send back to the government? Because of this, many North Korean diplomats and spies overseas started selling heroin and meth to keep their embassies running. But it wasn't just about covering costs. They were also expected to send money back to Pyongyang. I mean, it's like Sopranos. It's almost like a mafia state. You have this regime at the top, and you have all of these embassies scattered across the world acting as some sort of mafia captains. They have to meet a strict drug quota and send a portion of their money back to the boss. At the top of this criminal empire is, of course, the Kim dynasty. One high-profile North Korean defector put it bluntly: all the money in North Korea belongs to the North Korean leader. With that money, he builds villas, buys cars, eats well, dresses well, and lives in luxury. But the Kims aren't running this alone. Beneath them is the machine that makes it all work, a secretive organization known as the Bureau 39. Bureau 39 is part of the ruling party and is believed to control all of North Korea's illicit activities. They're the operational brains behind everything: drug production, counterfeiting US dollars, insurance scams, smuggling contraband cigarettes, you name it. They hand down orders to party committees in every North Korean province. Those committees then pass the instructions down the chain until they reach the people actually producing the drugs. Those, of course, are poor farmers that are forced to meet strict quotas. Once the drugs are produced, they're funneled through a web of North Korean companies, diplomats, and spies who then sell them both internationally and domestically. And while their production quality was supreme, their distribution was lackluster. North Korea's involvement in drug trade became known to the world not long after they began producing these substances. One of the earliest major incidents happened in 1976, when a dozen members of North Korea's diplomatic corps were caught smuggling booze, cigarettes, and drugs. As a result, they were expelled from 4 Scandinavian countries: Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. Over the years, more and more North Korean officials were arrested abroad in both major and minor drug busts. But the most blatant case was the Pongsu, the ship loaded with heroin. That incident shocked the international community and put a spotlight on North Korean diplomats and cargo vessels like never before. After the Pongsu incident, the number of direct arrests involving North Koreans dropped sharply. In early 2006, North Korea staged a highly publicized crackdown on meth. The regime announced a new law. Anyone caught with drugs, regardless of their status, service, or achievements, would face the death penalty. But many think that was just for show. Western authorities believe that the North Korean government is still heavily involved in drug trafficking, but they've stuck to the part that they are really good at, which is production, and they outsourced the distribution part, the selling of the drugs, kind of the dark part of the drug operation, to more experienced mafia organizations. I'm talking mainly about the Japanese Yakuzas, Chinese triads, and Russian mafia cells, and of course some occasional roguish crime organizations. Like a game of whack-a-mole, every so often a major drug bust uncovers a North Korean connection. In 2011, the FBI launched an operation called Smoking Dragon, targeting a Chinese black merchant in Los Angeles. This individual wasn't just dealing fake cigarettes and counterfeit $100 bills, he was also selling extremely pure methamphetamine, all linked back to North Korea. Bob Hammer, a former FBI agent who worked undercover on the case, recalled he was once offered a tour of a North Korean drug facility. He also added,
"They want to build a meth lab in North Korea. It's set out so that it will be, I get 200 kilos, John and Mr. Chen get 200 kilos, and the North Korean government gets 200 kilos. The North Korean government will protect it. They will guarantee that it gets out of the country."
Do the North Koreans know about this?
Absolutely.
The government?
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's nothing you can really do in North Korea without the government knowing.
No.
And
North Korea is a criminal enterprise.
But North Korean drugs don't just move through international markets, they are rampant inside the country as well. One of the main reasons why meth spread so fast in North Korea is because it was actually given out as treatment for chronic illnesses. In a broken, isolated state with no real healthcare system, addictive substances became a quick fix. In a twisted way, numbing the population became a win for the regime. Even high school students are reportedly taking meth regularly. With no access to real medicine and no public education around addiction, many North Koreans use meth the same way others use aspirin or antibiotics. But it's not just a mental escape, it's also financial survival. Selling just 1 gram of meth can earn enough to buy dozens of kilograms of rice. In a famine-ridden society, that's not just income, it's life or death. All signs suggest that North Korea is still heavily involved in drug trafficking today. North Korean society is trapped in a horrifying cycle of addiction and poverty. For the regime, it's a source of much-needed cash and a silent weapon, sedating an entire population, keeping them numb and keeping them quiet. In a place many already call hell on earth, drugs have become both a survival tool and a prison.